Are you excited for 2023? I know I am, because I know there's a whole slew of brand new board games, wooden bits and cardboard shits coming our way. And finally we might receive those Kickstarters we backed 2 years ago. In this video, we go through my top 5 most anticipated games of 2023. Let's go! Hey Danny, are you excited for the new year? Yeah man, I can't wait to play all these brand new board games. Are you with me? Oh, I'm not sure, dude. We still have a whole backlog of brand new board games dating back to 2008. Number 5 on my list is a game that involves going and exploring the great outdoors. I think you might need a pair of boots because you'll be doing a lot of hiking, cycling, and kayaking. The game I'm referring to is Trailblazers. Trailblazers is a card drafting, domino laying style game where players are trying to create loops of trails that start at their campsite and return to their campsite. And try to make them as meandering and as long as possible. The longer the loops are, the more points they're actually going to score. What is really cool and ingenious about this game is the way that the cards are used. Players are going to be drafting 2 cards at a time and passing the rest of their cards around the circle. And when they lay their cards, you can either lay the cards so that the edges of your cards connect to other paths, or you can lay the cards on top so they overlap other cards to create pathways in the directions that you want. There's that added level of flexibility and exploration. You're like, ooh, my pathway's curving away from my campsite. Maybe I can lay this other card on top to make it loop back. This sense of scoring for long loops is really something that fits so well into this theme. I just think that they've taken this domino mechanic and just really elevated it to another level. And there are all these objectives that players are racing for as well. So not only are you building these trails in front of you, you're trying to get to these objectives first. And there's ones where it's like build the longest kayaking route, and whoever gets to those objectives scores the most points for that objective. So there's a huge racing element, but there's this meandering element of being like, you know what, I'm going to create this really cool maze on the side. The 4th game on my list takes you back to the year 1937 as you fly a plane from San Francisco to your destination, but you never quite reach where you're supposed to go. You go through a portal and enter into a new world full of bizarre creatures, new lands, and quests to fulfill. The game I'm referring to is a sequel to one of Ryan Locket's biggest games, and that is Sleeping Gods: Distant Skies. What I really loved about Sleeping Gods was the free open world exploration. You manage this crew and you move your little ship around the map, and as you got to the edge of the atlas, you could flip the page and keep moving around the world. It really had a Legend of Zelda Wind Waker feel to it, where you could just do whatever you want. Talk to whoever you wanted to talk to, go down quests, encounter different story plots, and pick up people along the way. And it just really was such a great system for exploring a whole new world. It was a great solo game as well as a fantastic 2-player game, but just the endless possibilities and branching choices in the original game just absolutely enthralled me. The sequel does come with a few changes. The quest system and the atlas system still remains. This new game does introduce adventure cards, which kind of replaces those command tokens that appeared in the original game, but now you're acquiring adventure cards and playing those adventure cards from your hand. The combat still retains that cool creature grid system where each creature had a grid underneath, and you could kind of slash the creature and do damage to multiple creatures that were adjacent to each other, and by covering up some of the creature's abilities you could weaken it. And I think in this game they introduce a combat deck, so you can kind of pick up weapons along the way, and when you battle things you use that combat deck to defeat those creatures, which is, I think, a really cool mechanic. And I love that little mini game element of the combat system from the original game. Oh, you can tell I'm so excited. I also like the tweak to the event deck. Now, the event deck used to be you dealt with the event as they came up, but now you can kind of save the event cards and kind of deal with multiple events when you want to deal with them. The game also introduces a time track, which kind of tracks how long it takes to do things. Camping takes up 4 units of time, whereas exploring the map takes up 1 unit of time, and you're going to encounter obstacles that you have to go over, and if you can't defeat the obstacles, you take damage. There's also a plane that allows you to travel to distant places much more quickly. I know in the original game, traveling by boat meant you had to kind of ponder your way from one corner of the map to the other, and that used to take a lot of time. Now you can just bounce around the map, fly in the plane, and not only that, and this is the best part of it, you can explore new locations that go beyond the atlas, and when you discover new locations through encounters, you can add it to this plane flight track where you can move your plane across. This is going to be so premium. The third game that I'm most looking forward to is a Eurogame, and I'm a huge fan of Eurogames, and this is a game that's centered around an ancient civilization, and I love games like Mexica, Teotihuacan, and Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar, where you gather resources, move up temple tracks, gain tech tiles, and then try and create an engine that churns you the most victory points. This game that I'm going to introduce to you is one that takes that idea of civilization building and turns it upside down on its head. In fact, I would describe it as civilization destruction, and it is Copen, the Dying City. This is a cool Eurogame with a unique perspective. At the beginning of the game, players are going to have a plentiful amount of resources, and I know there's food, power, zeal, and fame. And throughout the game, as players use those resources, each resource has a decline trait. Those resources are going to diminish over the game, and they're going to become more and more scarce as you reach the end of the game. And as they become more and more scarce, it will trigger certain devastating effects. Cities will fall, people will starve. There's just crazy amounts of things that are going to happen in this game that you're going to have to be able to manage. And by the end of the game, you really want to leave the most everlasting memory of your time in this beautiful Mayan city. And that theme, married with the mechanics in this game, is enough to just hook me in. I love the resource gathering that you use in this game, where you place little tiles on a pyramid grid, and whether those tiles touch other tiles, they earn you extra resources. Kind of like in a game, a Stefan Feld game that I've got called Bonfire. You can also use fame to gain character cards, which give you endgame scoring conditions and rule bonuses. You can also use zeal to climb up altars. And then you can also try and claim all these cool jade mask relics to build this cool mask that is kind of reminiscent of your wealth and your history as a noble in this city, especially after it falls and it declines. This sense that, the game becomes more restrictive as you play it is something that really appeals to me, and I don't think there's a game in my collection that kind of follows that pathway. And the second game that I'm most looking forward to is usually a type of game that I'm not really that heavily invested into, mainly because I love Euro components and I love creating like little machines. This game has a lot of story behind it, something that you can explore. It's got customizable characters, including little miniatures where you can kind of detach the head and the body and the legs and then rejoin them to create your own character. It's got a very open world feel, and you're, discovering lost treasures, and then you can customize the equipment that your character has and how you're going to use those characters in combat. Sounds familiar? It sounds like pretty much every other kind of RPG type board game out there, but this one stands above the others, mainly because of how expansive and unique and customizable it is. And if you're thinking Gloomhaven right now or Frosthaven, maybe this one's a little bit more of a whimsical and lighter version of it. It is Aridia, the Paths We Dare Tread. It is a cool game which centers around 4 big pillars. The idea of exploring an open world by flipping over these hexes on this map and visiting locations which are represented by location tiles, which then you can explore little villages and places and little houses, and then there's tiles that go on top of the houses that allow you to enter them and speak to people inside. It makes you feel like you're playing like a cool computer game where you're exploring the world and trying to point and click your way through and discover what's been going on. You're going to also progress. There's an index system in this game where when you talk to NPCs, using the index is going to change the conversation that you've had with them after you've spoken to them before. And I think that is a beautiful, ingenious story mechanic. The game is a Green Legacy game where it contains all these little boxes that you unlock and then that add to how you explore the game, but then they can be reset if you want to start the game over from scratch. The combat system, I think, is pretty unique, and I think the combat dice is probably something I haven't seen. Each combat dice has this kind of little grid on it that matches the grid of equipment that you have on your player board, and when you roll the dice, it will show you which particular piece of equipment gets targeted. And also when you attack a creature or another character, they've got little weak points on the cards, and as you do damage, you put little counters on those weak points to signify where you've hit that character or creature. I think just the visual element of this game and the fact that you can customize it to make it feel unique to you and connect and embody the character as you explore this cool land of Aridia is something that really has drawn me in. The moment has arrived. My number one most anticipated game is centered around a theme that is dear to my heart. And if you've seen my videos before, you notice that I have a lot of fish tanks, plants, a lot of green things around the house because I love not only this board gaming hobby, but the idea of sustainability, growing things, and heaps of plants. And this game ticks every one of those boxes. And the game is Earth. Earth is a Euro-style tableau building game where players are building self-sustainable ecosystems to try and grow and gain the most victory points possible. Players are going to start with double-sided island, ecosystem, and climate cards, each which gives players starting resources, abilities, and victory scoring conditions. There are actions that players are going to take, and there are 4 actions with 4 different colors. And what's really cool about this game is that when players take an action, they're going to be able to gain a major benefit, but all the other players are going to gain a minor benefit. So everybody grows in some way. And I love it. It's like building your own terrarium, and the terrarium that you're fostering and tendering to is going to help the terrarium that the player next to you is building, and all these environments are all going to be growing at the same time. So what makes this game stand out from the other tableau building games like Wingspan and Everdell? I love the idea of having plants. Plant cards are going to help you build your engine efficiency, and they even come with these little cool little trunk cards and wooden treetop cards that kind of develop and pop out of the board as you go. I also like the animals. You're going to be attracting fauna to your environments, which give you in-game scoring conditions. And then you're also laying out terrain, which is kind of like the foundation for the future flourishment of your environment, which gives you end-game scoring victory points. Playing actions that benefits other people is something that is really cool in games like this. That positive sense of interaction where, you know what, I'm going to help myself, but I'm going to help you, you, and you. It's kind of a really gratifying experience of getting bonuses all throughout the game. Interaction doesn't always have to be denying things from other players. Sometimes helping other players in a competitive sense means that you're going to be like, ooh, how much do I want to help that other player? Do I want to help that player a lot, or do I want to help myself more than everyone else? So the combo of different cards and the synergies of cards to explore in this game is absolutely enormous. You know what? I think we do need to think more about our planet, especially when it comes to the amount of games that we have and the amount of plastic bags and plastic components that are included in games. And, you know, I'm a strong supporter of games that are really sustainable and environmentally friendly. And I just love it when a game really encapsulates that theme and that message, and why it is the number one most anticipated game for me for 2023. So, what did you think of my top 5 list? What are your most anticipated games of 2023? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below, because I'm always on the lookout for new games that usually fly under my radar. If you really like this video and want more wholesome board game content, then consider subscribing and liking this video. It's absolutely free. Otherwise, if you want to go extra step further, please support me on Patreon. I'd really greatly appreciate it. And there's a whole slew of other board game content on my channel waiting for you to unlock and explore. This is Danny signing out. See you in 2023.